Good afternoon, everyone. I am Myril Anema Bayon, and we are the Group 1. We are going to be talking about the Chapter 4, which is the Project Appraisal and Environmental Impact. In the environmental impact, the environment, the environment is taken in its wildest context to include all the physical, chemical, biological, and socioeconomic factors that influences individuals and communities. It includes air, water, land, living species, man-made structures, and aspects related to social, cultural, and economic human existence. Basically, the environment it comprises a wide range of elements. It includes these factors that are mentioned, and it encompasses everything from the air we breathe to the water we drink and to the social, cultural, and economic human aspects or economic aspects of human life. So, in the Environmental Impact Assessment or the EIA, the purpose of the EIA is to evaluate these positive and negative effects as objectively as possible and present the information in a manner that is accessible to decision makers so that it can be used in conjunction with other appraisal tools such as cost benefit analysis. So basically, the EIA or the Environmental Impact Assessment is a systematic process that aimed at objectively evaluating the positive and negative effects of a project on the environment. Engineering projects may have an impact on the full range of environmental features, including air, water, land, ecology, sound, human aspects, economics, and natural resources. Um, Many of these impacts can be measured in terms of changes to specific quality parameters, such as concentration of particulates or hydrocarbons in the air or dissolved oxygen concentration in water. The engineering projects, no, it has or it have potential to affect various environmental aspects like this air, water, sound, human aspects, and the likes. While some impacts they are easily measurable, such as the changes in air pollution levels or like the visual appeal of a landscape. So we have different types of impacts. First, we have the direct or primary impacts. Those directly attributable to the project, such as noise pollution from airports or visual impact of structures. So basically, this kind of impact, they are directly caused by the project itself, such as the noise pollution from different sorts of activities or the visual impacts of new structures. We also have the indirect or secondary impacts, which arise from material or resource use, like pollution from manufacturing cement or quarrying for project materials. So this type of impact it results from the use of materials and resources for the project. And last, we have the low order impacts, which result from the production of equipment used in the project. We also have different types of duration of impacts. First, we have the long-term impacts, which continue throughout the project's operating life, like pollution from thermal power stations. This kind of impact, it persists throughout the operational life of the project. Whereas the short-term or the temporary impacts, it arises during the planning, design, and construction phases, such as noise and dust from construction activities. Basically, of course, during the planning or the construction and initial operational phases of the project. Environmental impacts, it can be temporary or permanent, indirect or secondary. So it is necessary to differentiate between these categories in an environmental impact statement. So basically, the environmental impact can be classified based on their duration and their relationship to the project. Moving on to another topic, which is the environmental impact assessment. So in the environmental impact assessment, or the EIA, it examines the effects of project and policies on the environment to ensure the long-term viability of the Earth as a habitable planet. It also identifies and classifies project impacts, predicts their effects on the natural environment and human health, and communicates findings in environmental impact statements, or the EIS, for decision making. So basically, the purpose of the EIA is to ensure the long-term sustainability of the Earth by examining how projects and policies affect the environment. And of course, it also identifies and classifies and predicts the project impacts on nature and, of course, to human health. So we have different types of EIA process. First would be the screening, which determines if detailed EIA is necessary. So sa screening, dara makita if dapat necessary ba ang EIA. Second, we have the scoping, which sets priorities and defines the scope of environmental studies. So it establishes the study priorities. Third would be the baseline studies, which collects background information on ecosystems and socioeconomic settings. So it gathers background data on ecosystems and socioeconomic context. Fourth would be the impact prediction, which predicts the environmental changes during the project construction and operation. So it forecasts environmental changes now during the project phases. And last would be the environmental impact statement, or the EIS. So this EIS, it reports the prediction and baseline findings for appraisal and approval process. So basically the EIS, it reports predictions and data for appraisal and approval. Implementation and monitoring. So the environmental parameters are monitored throughout the project implementation to improve forecasting accuracy. So the these parameters, the environmental parameters, they are continuously monitored during the project implementation so that the accuracy will be enhanced. And also, auditing compares predictive impacts with actual outcomes post-project implementation. So the auditing, it compares predicted impacts with the actual outcomes post-project project planning. Moving on to another topic, which is the screening. So screening, it is the first step of the EIA process, and it is the selection of those projects that requires an EIA. So screening, this is, as I've said earlier, it is the initial step of the environmental impact assessment, or the EIA process, which determines the projects that requires an EIA. So the requirements for an EIA largely depend on the legislative policy of the country in which the project is to be carried out. So the EIA, it requires the influenced by the legislative policies throughout the country where the project is located. So through the screening process, only those projects that require EIA are selected for study. And by doing this, the unnecessary expenditure and delay is avoided. So the legislation, it often dictates, no, the legislation, it often dictates the type of project that needed EIA and the extent of the required study. And of course, this is to prevent the unnecessary expenditure or delay by focusing on the resource on projects with significant environmental impacts. And the screening process will depend on whether or not the appropriate legislation exists, and where it does, the law will often differentiate between those types of project that need an EIA and those who do not. So there's an absence of a specific legislation, the project managers they must conduct preliminary studies to determine if the environmental impacts and decide if an EIA is necessary or needed for a project or not.